Hello, this is CurtisCroweThePhotoPro here, and today we're going to talk about another photographer's photo. One of our followers here provided a photo and asked, "Hey Curtis, why is this image blurry?" He's like, "Is there something wrong with my macro lens? Is it broken?" And I looked at this photo, and honestly, I have really good news. There is nothing wrong with your macro lens. If you look here, you'll see that there's very sharp aspects to the photo. I mean, just tiny little details here and there that are just super sharp. And and there's nothing wrong with your lens, even though there is some very blurry aspects. But there's this thing called depth of field when you use photography, and your depth of field is massively affected by a few things. One being your aperture, which we all know, and f5.6 is an aperture that usually gets your subject sharp all the way through. But another very important thing that affects your depth of field is your distance from the subject. So when you use a macro lens and you get really close to your subject, I mean, I'm talking, where we're normally a couple feet away, with a macro lens you're more like a couple inches away, if that. You're getting so close to your subject that your depth of field is just shrinking to this really razor thin hairline field in which things stay sharp. So in order to fix this, I would recommend looking at your other settings. I see you're at 1/100th of a second, and at 60 millimeters, that's pretty much where you want to be, if not even possibly a little higher. But you're at ISO 1250, and on a Canon EOS Rebel T3i, I personally use that camera for a long time. I know once you get to 1600 ISO, I mean, it's going to have a major effect on your photos. So you are limited on a couple things here because of your body. If you want to get this entire thing sharp, you either have to stand a little farther back, and you would end up having to crop, which is not a preferred technique. Ideally, what you would do is bring this more like f12. Maybe you can get away with f10. Actually, just start with f8 and just incrementally work your way up and see where you like your depth of field at, because from increasing the depth of field to keeping this sharp to keeping that sharp, you're going to need at least a couple stops at that distance if you want to stay the same distance but just increase your aperture. But be aware, your ISO is going to go up when you do that in order to keep your image at perfect exposure. So you're going to have to toy around with your settings, but again, your distance is a major factor in your depth of field, and so is your aperture. So either take a little bit step back and increase your aperture. If you can add flash, that would be fantastic, because then you can pump more light into the photo, and you'd be able to increase your aperture without actually sacrificing your ISO. So that's a couple things to think about. You can either add flash, you can step back a little bit and crop, or you can increase your aperture. But again, all of them have their positive and negatives. For example, the aperture, increasing the aperture, the negative to that would be increasing the ISO. Increasing your distance from the subject means you'll have to crop, so your image won't be as high resolution. And lastly, if you add flash, that's going to put a more light on your subject, but it's going to darken your background a little bit, and you may not want that. Plus, that'll take a little extra technical skill. Or if you have more than one flash, you can pull this off either way if you have more than one flash, because then you can light up your background as well. So that's just a few things to consider. Again, it's nothing wrong with your lens. Your lens is still a very sharp, very high quality lens. Don't worry that it might be broken, because it's not. It's still performing top notch. You still have tons of detail and tons of sharpness. It's just you're so close to your subject that you are going to have to compensate for that depth of field optical rule, basically. So I hope that helps you out. Let me know in the comment section down below if you have any questions. Go ahead and hit that like button and share this with any of your photographer friends. This has been Curtis Crowe, the Photo Pro, and as I always do, toodles.
Second thing is very important, and I feel like it's something that people kind of graze over, and that's itemize your gear. Find out how much every single piece of gear you have costs.
Nice front element. I don't know if you can see that. how beautiful that is. Let's open up the other side so you can see all the way.
Jeans, if we wanted to see how much that's changed in the before and after shot.